Hi guys, I'm Charlie, a book fanatic. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do my Pokemon Indigo League Readathon wrap up. In this readathon I read 11 books and there were 8 challenges, so I read 3 more books than was necessary and I'm very happy about that. This was a 3-week readathon and it went from the middle of August to the beginning of September and I had a ton of fun. The challenges were made up out of badges you could get from the different cities and I thought it was a very original and fun idea, so I'm going to list the books I have read along with those badges. The first badge I got was the Boulder badge you get in Pewter City, and the task is to read the first book in the series. And the book I read to get this badge is Wolf by Wolf, which is the first book in the Wolf by Wolf series by Graudin. This book is about a girl called Yael who is a skin shifter. She can change into different people and she changes into Adele Wolf and participates in this motorcycle race that she has to win so she can kill Hitler, because this is an alternate history set after the Second World War where Hitler has won the war. And she obviously gets to meet a lot of people like Luca, the love interest, and Felix, who is Adele's real brother, and she has to act like Adele to get through this race. This book really surprised me and I gave it 4 stars. I normally don't like World War stories because I got a lot of that through elementary school, middle school and high school, and I'm not the biggest fan of it, but this one sounded really good, so I gave it a try and I ended up really liking it. I fell in love with the main character Yael because we really don't know who she actually is, because she is trying to act like Adele for the whole book, and the ending of this book was such a cliffhanger. Like, honestly, I cannot wait for the second book, Blood for Blood, which isn't out yet, but I have read the novella between Wolf by Wolf and Blood for Blood and I was disappointed by that, but I am still very surprised by the series. The second badge is the Cascade badge, which you can get in Cerulean City. Read a book that might make you cry, and I read Before Your Eyes by Caroline Bock. I rated this one 2 stars because I felt like the plot was completely pointless and I didn't even get why 2 of the main characters were in the book, but it is about a boy who is the son of a father who wants to get elected as state senator, a girl whose mother had a stroke and she has to care for her younger sister, and a boy who has schizophrenia. And it is mostly about the boy who has schizophrenia, but at the end of the book all of their storylines intertwine, but the climax of the story didn't make any sense to me and I honestly thought this book was really weird. The third badge I got was the Thunder badge, which you get in Vermilion City. Read a book with thunderous hype. I read A Court of Mist and Fury, which is the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. I read the first book, I rated it 3 stars, I wasn't impressed with it, and then I gave the second book a chance because everyone has been raving about it, and I gave it 5 stars because I fell in love with all of the characters. All of them have such well fleshed out personalities. Like, I love Feyre and I didn't dislike her in the first book. And Reasoned and Feyre are like my OTP right now, and I don't say that lightly. Next badge I got was the Rainbow badge, which you get in Celadon City. Read a book featuring diversity, and I read Gena and Finn by Hannah Moskowitz. This is about 2 girls who meet on an online website. This book is formatted through text messages, emails and fanfiction. They meet on a sort of Tumblr where they are fangirling about their favorite TV show and they start messaging each other. This is an LGBTQ+ book which features a lesbian relationship, but not really, because one of the characters is in a heterosexual relationship and the other one is kind of still involved with her ex, who is also a guy. So it was kind of confusing, the plot, but overall it was a very accurate depiction of fanfiction. I felt like it is the most accurate depiction I have seen so far. Then I got the Soul badge, which I got in Fuchsia City. Read a book with an epic romance. I read Lady Thief, which is the second book in the Scarlet trilogy by A.C. Gaughen. The first book starts off as a Robin Hood retelling, and this is obviously a continuation of that, but it's only lightly because the author just takes a trope of a Robin Hood steals from the rich to give to the poor, and she makes up her own story with that. The second book is very different from the first book. I feel like there's a lot more tragedy, a lot more torture, and it was sometimes very hard to actually read about. but I still rated the second book 3 stars like I did the first book. I got a Maas badge from Saffron City. Read a book with fantasy or supernatural elements. I read Everland by Wendy Spinale. This is also a retelling, but a retelling of Peter Pan in a kind of a steampunk dystopian setting. It is about the UK that gets plagued with this virus, and all of the adults die instantly, but children get infected slowly, and there is one girl who isn't immune, and Captain Hook is trying to get to her to make a cure for the virus. It was a very unique retelling of Peter Pan because I obviously haven't read a book with a setting like this one, and I felt that did a lot of good for the book because it made it very original, and I feel like the characters were fun, but I didn't get some of the artistic choices the author made, like changing Wendy Darling's name to Gwen Darling and changing Wendy's little brother John to a sister named Joanna, and also calling Peter Pete. That really annoyed me. So I didn't get some of those choices, but overall it was a very fun read. Then I got the Flame badge from Cinnabar Island. Read a book with a red cover, and I came up with Rebel Spring, which is the second book in the Fallen Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes. This book doesn't have a red cover, but it has a character with a red cloak on, so I thought that would count. I wasn't in love with the first book, Fallen Kingdoms, but I liked one of the characters, Princess Cleo, and I read the second book and I started to dislike all of the characters. There's not one character I feel a connection to, so that is kind of sad. But I do want to continue on with the series because I am interested in finding out how the plot will go on, but not really in what will happen to the characters. And lastly, I got the Earth badge from Viridian City. Read a book with a post-apocalyptic setting. I finally read A Blood Red Road, which is the first book in the Dustland series by Moira Young. This book is about Saba, who sets out to rescue her brother Lou after he gets kidnapped, with her little sister Emmy in tow. I was not the biggest fan of the story. I think I rated it 3 stars because I felt like Saba was very unlikable, and the story was written phonetically, which I am not a fan of, and especially in this book I felt like it was kind of torturous to read through, but you get used to it after a while. But it was still very annoying, and I don't get why the author chose to write it phonetically. But I felt like I didn't feel invested in any of the characters. I didn't really care what happened to any of them, and I also felt like the love story was kind of insta-lovey and I didn't believe in it at all. So those were all of the 8 books I've read for the challenges, but I obviously have 3 more books to talk about. The first one we're going to be talking about is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This is the first book in the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers. The second book is going to come out in October and I cannot wait for it. It is so cool and I honestly don't even know how to describe it. It follows a crew on a spaceship, and they're all from different species, and it is about differences in race and interspecific relationships, and a lot of LGBTQ plus elements, polyamorous relationships, and it was so different from anything I have ever read before. And if you want to get into science fiction, I would really recommend this because I felt like it wasn't too technical. I felt like it didn't really all go over my head, except for the part where the crew did their thing. Like, they tunnel through space, and I honestly couldn't explain to you what it exactly is because it went over my head, but I felt like it didn't take anything away from the plot. This book is very centered on its characters, and I felt like the characters shone because of that. They all have their own personalities, and I really loved all of them and wanted to know more about them because I honestly love them so much. But I think the second book is following different characters. Not too sure about that, but I think it is, and I'm so sad because I love these characters. Then I did finish The Ask and the Answer, which is the second book in the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness. I thought I would finish this after the readathon. I honestly didn't think I would be able to do it, but I actually managed to finish it, and I like it a lot more than I did the first book. I still rated it 3 stars, but I felt like reading it in English made it a lot better than my reading experience for the first book, which I read in Dutch, and I was very annoyed with the writing because the story is written phonetically, and the writing in the first book really annoyed me because it was in Dutch, and the second book it really didn't bother me that much because it was only sometimes and not a lot was written phonetically. But I came to care for some of the characters, but one of the characters I came to care for actually died. That's kind of sad, I guess. But this is a dystopian story, you could say. and it follows Todd, who escapes from his town, Prentice Town, and he encounters Violet, who is from Earth, and they have to run from the army that's following them. And then the last book I read during this readathon was When We Collided by Emery. This is a contemporary YA story that talks about bipolar disorder. I think it's an own voices novel. Emery suffers from bipolar disorder herself, and I felt like this was a very accurate portrayal of bipolar disorder. I honestly recognized all of the elements in it. And Vivi, who's the female main character, was described as a very happy character in the synopsis, but I immediately knew something was wrong with her because her behavior wasn't normal. You could immediately see there was more there, and I felt like this book was incredible because of it. Some people say that Vivi is unlikable, and she is. She's supposed to be unlikable because bipolar disorder, when you're not on your pills, you are unlikable, and you don't think about being unlikable because you can't think. You can only think about yourself and what you're doing in that moment. And I feel like a lot of people don't get that because Vivi is not supposed to be a likable character. I didn't like the male main character in the story much, Jonas, because he had his own story, he had his own personality, he had his little family, but I didn't feel connected to his family at all. I was just interested in Vivi and how she spiraled out of control. These were the 11 books I read during the readathon. I had a very fun time, and I want to participate in more readathons like this because it felt very chilled out, because I could read at my own pace, because I read a lot of books nonetheless. So a 3-week readathon was great for me, and I had a bucket load of fun. But let me know down below if you've read any of the books I've read and what you think about them. Do you want to read any of these books? Let me know down below. I would love to know. Thank you for watching. Goodbye!